And we're ready to go. So, guys, what I just did is what you may find beneficial in your classroom as you start thinking about how to support kids in online environments. So what I want to do to get started is, first of all, did everybody get a copy of this? And I know the writing is like ridiculously small. The intent wasn't that you were able to read that as much as it is just a prompt so that you can look at it as you go. Does anybody need pens, thinking that you may want to be jotting notes to yourselves as you go? I wish I could tell you these had been sterilized. Oh, and you didn't get notes. Just one second. I don't know that those are necessarily necessary, but hey, how are you?
Good.
A gift. Right there. Hey, you going to join us? Perfect. There you go. Is everyone all set? Hey, that didn't take long for the first tennis ball to come off. All right, who lost their tennis ball? They've already become weaponized. Goodness gracious. All right, are we all settled? Are we good to go? So, guys, before we dig into this, I want to sort of start with the end in mind and make an offer to you if you want to jot this down. For those of you that don't know, and there are a few in here that are new to my world and you to our world, my name is Zach, and that's my mobile number. Apparently now I have a phone, a classroom phone. Before I had one buried under my sink, and they found it and took it and replaced it with that, but I never answer that thing. So if you do ever need me, and that's really an offer, I am more than happy to help you individually with everything that we're going to talk about today. I don't expect you to walk out of here being able to do this, although some of you will be able to, but I'm here for the rest of the week, and I would love to help you if you need. So please don't hesitate to call my mobile phone if you need me. So guys, with that said, we're going to actually accomplish, I think, 4 things today. The first thing I want to do is establish the need. Why is it, given our new realities, that what I want to share with you might be an inviting alternative for you as you're thinking about your schooling this year? Then I want to present what Brittany and I do. I said my solution, but this is really Britt and I. Present the solution that we've implemented in our spaces relative to this. Then, guys, this is, I frankly thought about not doing this, but I decided to because I know that for me, it's easier for me to accomplish something if I actually understand how it works in the background. So I want to spend a couple minutes and talk with you about physically the way our rooms are constructed and how it is that this screencasting functionality works. If that all just sounds like gibberish to you, don't worry about it. You don't need to understand it. Because at the very end of this, we're going to talk nuts and bolts, this wire goes in this port kind of stuff. And you'll walk out of here with at least a cheat sheet if you want to go into your classroom and try to start hooking some of this stuff up. And again, if you get stuck, if you want other ideas or support, please let me know because I'd love to come and help. Okay, so guys, this is my thinking behind why I'm offering this in-service, if you will. So you guys know that many of us are actually going to be supporting online students because these kids have chosen to take our classes online. And you may know that we got together as departments and we talked about these are the classes that we will support online. To the district's credit, they allowed us to indicate which classes we don't believe we can support online. But many of us will be teaching in blended classes. So now we need to call time out. Do you guys know how to tell the difference between your in-class and online students? Let's talk about it. So originally, go ahead.
So to begin with, can you tell us which classes will be online?
That is a conversation to have with your CTL. So we got together as a CTL committee and we went through the schedule and basically said, this class we can support online, this class we're going to push to East Shore, this class we can't practically teach online. And so if your CTL can't give you the specific details, Paul Kenley's the one to talk to, because he's the one that compiled that list. We sent it to the district. They were in support of it. So the three options are only in school, push to East Shore, and then that middle ground that says it's being taught in your room, but you're supporting kids in the online environment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Exactly. And so that was my other point, is that whether you're supporting an online class or not, I mean, the numbers would say eventually you're going to get kids that have to quarantine because of COVID. And they are fully a member of your class. But for 2 weeks at least, they're going to be stuck at home. And somehow or another, I think we're all eventually going to get in the spot where we've got to support kids in extended online learning situations. So, but the reason, oh, please. That's a good question. And so I'm deathly afraid of Canvas, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to Skyward. The original plan was that in Skyward, they were going to create separate sections. So you would have A1 chemistry in person, A1 chemistry online. They found that that was problematic. So what they're actually going to do is we will be able to identify the kids that have chosen the online option by their attendance. And what we'll see once we know who's where, they are going to mass fill their attendance with a D, which means district excused. And so the way to identify your online kids will be by looking at their attendance and looking for those Ds. Yep, and again, understand this is only for the classes that you indicated to your CTLs that you are willing to support online. So, but that kind of brings us to our third bullet point here, which is actually why I think this makes sense. Because frankly, I think it's a really big ask to try to approach teachers and say, you need to support your online environment, which is what you've done your entire career. And oh, by the way, figure out something that will also support these students in the online environment that is unique and different. And so I know for me, just from a survival standpoint, I need a way to invite those online kids into my classroom without having to do something radically different. Now, one of the concerns with this was time limitations. The district has said that we can ask 30 to 40 minutes of an online student. But when I asked for clarification on that, what they actually said was that 30 to 40 minute limit, if you will, is only if we move fully online. If you have kids that chose online and we're still in the building, we have a lot more leeway in terms of the amount of time that we can expect of them. So in my thinking, if I can figure out a way to get class home, then the only real complication that I'm going to have with the kids is how to get home back into class in terms of turning in assignments and things like that. Brittany and I have some strategies that worked really well. We're not going to talk about them this morning, but I'd love to talk as individuals. Brittany and I found some strategies that worked so well, we're actually going to implement them into our in-class experiences this year. Just because it worked well, and also because if schools do shut down, the kids already know how to play the game. But I'd be happy to talk with you about that later. So guys, any questions about sort of the framework and why we're doing this and what I might know about what the fall looks like? You guys all okay? We're all right? Okay. So guys, with that said, let's talk a little bit about what we do. So what Brittany and I have found a way to do is seamlessly invite students into our space. Understand this is not bi-directional. If you want to talk about that, can I mention your name? Okay, so Brian is actually looking at ways of doing this synchronously. Just to paint a really quick picture, it involves a Chromebook in the back of his room that stands in for all of his online students. Microphone, camera in the Chromebook, and those kids then would need to be available and online during that class period. And you're even envisioning kids at home being able to raise their hand and ask questions. That's not something I think I'm frankly good enough to do. So I'm going to be satisfied with just finding a way to take what happens in my room and get it home to the kids. So it's not synchronous. Yeah.
So how do you pick up the sound from the various students?
That's so within this space, you mean? That's a really good question, and there is a way to do it. You know that right now I've got my microphone on, which is going into the room. We actually have second microphones, and so I experimented with this a little bit, and it would be like, Josh, you have a question, and I would hand Josh the microphone. We'll actually work with two microphones. But frankly, I found that it was really cumbersome, that it just, for me, and again, this is just the way I teach, just like it destroyed the flow of class. And so frankly, what I did to compensate for that is I'm very careful to repeat the kids' questions. So, Josh, you're curious about, and then I repeat the question so it does get captured. Frankly, if you're in the front 2 rows, this microphone will pick those up. But I just find that repeating the questions worked better than handing a microphone. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, and then you've got the problem of having to wipe it with your mouth.
That's something I hadn't even considered. You had a question, just a moment. And yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So, so with all of that said, let's talk a little bit about the work that you all need to do in order to be able to get this to function. So in terms of your content, first of all, it's got to be digital. By that I mean something that's projected on the wall. And that doesn't need to be a smartboard. It could simply be a screen. But again, the end goal here is that we're going to create a screencast. And a screencast is literally just a video with audio. But it's a video of the instruction, didactic instruction that's going on inside your classroom. And so it's very much, it has to be digital content. So that can mean anything that appears on your projector, including PowerPoint or keynote presentations. It can be video. And actually this works really, really well. You can show a video and then, you know, whether it's a little snippet that you're using instructionally, if you're showing an entire video, be really careful about copyright. But video works really well in this, and what you'll find, and I'll show you how this works in a minute, the audio from the video and the microphone get blended. So like many times InClass will show kids videos about electrons, chemical phenomenon, and I can talk over the video or pause the video, and the kids get all of that through this system. Simulations and animations work really well. And then finally, websites, Google content, anything that comes out of your computer is great content for this. Understand that you don't need a smartboard or any type of interactive board. Certainly if you have one, it enhances the experience, as you'll see in a minute. But you don't have to have a smartboard in order to do this. This could just be a projector against a flat screen, and it works just great. So guys, in terms of tech requirements, then, these are the things that have to be present in your room. And frankly, up until 2 weeks ago, I thought everybody in the school had this, but we've transitioned some spaces that weren't originally meant to be classrooms into classrooms. And so it sounds like there may be a couple of teaching spaces that don't have this tech. So first of all, you need a projector. Matt pointed out a minute ago that my room's a little bit different. Our projectors normally hang off of the voice lift systems. Mine died years ago. The district asked me to try out some other solutions, and so this is just a different projector. Then you need an amplification system. That's this. If you need your voice lift system. I know that many of us don't use them, but you'll need to if you want to take advantage of this. Please. Yeah, so let's talk about it really quickly, because there are a lot of people in the school that think their systems don't work. These things actually have just rechargeable AA batteries in it. Guys, if you're going to replace the battery in your microphone, please don't just huck a AA in here, because when you put this thing in the cradle, it recharges the battery, and alkaline batteries are not meant to be recharged. These are actually rechargeable NiCads that look like AA's. Megan bought a bamboozle of these things, so don't shove a AA in here. Go to Megan and ask her for a rechargeable battery, and that's going to solve 90% of our problems. The death of our systems, and you'll know that you're dead, really dead, is if you have lights circling on your panel. And what that means is actually the power supply up inside the brains of this unit got fried, and we have to replace it. We probably replaced 15 or 20% of the systems when we moved into the school because they had faulty power supplies and they wouldn't warranty them. So if you see the dancing lights, you've got a big issue. If you don't, and the way that you'll know that this is working is if you look at this dome. Oh, come on, little fella. Why is that not green? Yeah, but, okay, so mine's not green, but it's working. That's interesting. Okay, hold on. Oh, there we go. For some reason, yeah, so if you look at this dome, what you're actually looking for is that green light. Apparently it's not completely necessary, but you're looking for that green light. Hey, buddy. No, you're perfect. Yeah, and so it's green now. And then, guys, I don't know if you know this, but our microphones do actually have a mute. There's actually a transmitter in this panel right here that talks to this thing. It's not radio. It's infrared, the same thing as a remote control. So, all right, so we're back to green. And my phone. So you need an amplification system. Guys, if you don't have one in your room and you'd really like to do this, there are solutions to that problem. And I think we could probably beg for money and see if we couldn't get you something. Then in addition to that, you need screen recording software. I've tried lots of different solutions. I hadn't tried Loom until March broke out, and I actually switched to Loom, which is what we're using now, and I actually like it better than any of the other solutions that I've ever used. So Loom is a great answer. And then, guys, finally, the last thing that you need are the necessary wires, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but I went and ordered a bunch, and so I'll ask you to go to your room, see if you have the wires you need, and if you don't, we'll be distributing those. Okay, then finally, and this is probably not in your notes. I think I added this after I printed them. Guys, optionally, a wireless mouse is really nice. You've probably noticed that I walk around a lot, and I can actually interact with my board from anywhere in the room with this. It makes kids really nervous because you can sort of touch them and still teach. So I would like a wireless mouse. If you're interested, I can help you make the purchase. Interactive whiteboards are great, but not necessary. I use mine extensively, but you don't have to have one. And then finally, and we'll talk about this, well, I'll show you how this works, but we're not going to talk about it. Annotation software for me is huge. And I can just tell you the one, if you're on a Mac, this isn't in the notes. Oh, gosh. Sorry. It didn't hear my button click. Oh. I'll just do it here. So if you're interested, we're back to this. My kids actually figured out last year how to fix this. If you're interested in this, the one that you want is actually called, whoa. I know. I may need to recalibrate my pen. This is what happens when you teach the first day back from class. Let me see what happens. Let me put it up here. Yeah, this is actually going to be a problem. The software that I use, which you're now not very impressed with, is actually Ink2Go. But that's not a function of the software. It's actually a function of my board because I didn't calibrate it this morning. Frankly, because my projector died, or my printer died, and I spent the morning working on that instead of the other. So if you're on a Mac, Ink2Go is a great solution to that. So anyway, that's the foundation of this. Thoughts or things that you want to talk about with any of that?
So if you don't have a smart board, you just lift the screen and write on the board. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if you need to. I mean, if there are things that you need to be writing, I mean, if you've got whiteboard space, that's awesome. But understand the problem is the kids at home won't see any of that. Yeah. So, right. Yeah, so what it's doing is it's recording what's going on your screen. And so if it's not on the screen, it's not in the video. Because what's actually happening, and I'm so glad you're asking this question, is your computer becomes not only the presenter, it becomes the recorder.
So what I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
is it's going to be presenting, but you're saying even though it's presenting, if you don't have a smart board, like it's on there and I've lifted the screen, I can't write on it.
Well, if you mean write by like and here.
So the software you're talking about, does it come with a special thing you use?
Yeah, so I do. So Ink2Go is software that allows you with a smartboard to write on your screen. So the only way that you'll have, typically the only way for you to be able to show the kids at home you writing is by doing it digitally with a smartboard. Does that make sense? There are ways to work around it with an iPad, but they're tricky at best. So yeah, is that okay? Guys, anything else you want to talk about in terms of requirements or what this might all turn into? Okay, this may turn into a disaster because my intention was to show you how this all works by drawing your attention to my room. But there's a very real chance that this is not going to work because of the way my board is misbehaving, which is really odd because it worked an hour ago. Okay. So it is, but what I intended to do was and maybe instead of drawing the arrows on here, I can just point you through it in the room. So we'll have a moment of silence, perhaps a brief prayer. Come on, baby. No.
That worked. It circled it.
It did. But it's not letting me write. Okay, so we'll leave it at that, and then I'll just do it visually, and we can go from there. So, guys, this is functionally how this works. And if you don't care to understand this, that's totally fine. But something if I understand how it functions. So in all of our in most of our classrooms, we have three things that we're aware of that we interact with frequently. One of those three things is a computer, and then we have a projector, regardless of where it's hanging, and then we also have our microphones. To fully understand how this thing works, you also need to understand that there's this ridiculous bubble on your ceiling, and that is a lot more than just a place to mount a projector. That's actually the brains of this system. So that board actually controls all the electronics up inside that bubble. And then, guys, the other thing you need to maybe be aware of to understand how this works are these four sort of like quarter panels, if you will, that are in our classroom. Those are our speakers. And so typically when you're teaching, and we'll sort of set the stage and then we'll grow past this, typically when you're teaching, the way that it works is this. You use your microphone to deal with sound, and the sound goes from your microphone into that brain and then out through the speakers. So Right now, sound in most of our rooms goes from here out into the room. Well, video is similar. Typically, the way video works inside of our room is the video starts in our computer, it goes up to that brain, and then it goes to the projector and out into the room. So the way that we use our systems right now is pretty much one directional. Sound and video goes into there, and then the sound goes to the speakers, and the video goes to the wall. Now that's a good start. But if you want to be able to screencast and accomplish the things that I'm talking about, what we've got to do is we've got to complete the circuit. We've got to get the flow back into the computer. Bless you. We got to get the flow back into the computer, because this is where, Sandy, as you got us thinking, this is where the recording happens. So this is the idea. In order to make a screencast, you need two things. You need video and you need audio. Now, we already have the video. So we've got the video already at the computer because it's where it's coming from anyway. The trick is the audio. How do we get the audio back into the computer so that we can capture it and send it home to the kids? And the answer is simple. It's just one more cable. And I'll show you what this looks like in a minute. But all we've got to do is this. The way our systems are hooked up, again, we've got the audio from our microphones into the brain, out into the speakers. But we also have the audio from our computers into the brain and out into the speakers. So all we need is one cable, just another audio cable that comes from the brain back into the computer. And so if we can get this audio back into the computer, then we've got the video and the audio in the computer, and then all we've got to do is record it. And that's what we're actually going to do by just giving you, if you need it, another cable. So in the end, this is actually what this looks like. So on your wall, you should have a panel that looks like this. Now, guys, you actually have two panels that look like this. One of them is a teaching panel, and one of them is an auxiliary panel. So the panel that you're looking for actually needs to have two sets of ports. You need two monitor ports and two audio ports. Now, I know, like, isn't, Gil, your panel like this in the back of your room?
No, my auxiliary is
Okay, and so, guys, some of your rooms may be set up a little wonky. We tried to have marshals put these teacher panels in places where we thought teachers were most likely to use as their teaching space. If yours is not in a convenient place, frankly, we're just going to have to run really long wires or ask you to reconfigure your room. But you need that. Then the only other thing that you need to make this happen is two of these cables. You should have one of them in your room currently because they were included when we set up the rooms. But functionally, they just look like this. It's a video cable, but alongside the video cable is actually an audio cable as well. I haven't opened these yet, but let's see if they're typical. Yeah, so what you're going to find when you look at these things is that, oh, these are the same. Good. So some of these blended cables that you may get, the audio cables are different lengths. One of them's really short, and then the other one's quite a bit longer. If that's the case, the one with the long audio cable you want to attach to your computer, and that gives you the additional length in case the ports are on different sides of the computer, and then the shorter one goes in the wall. So, again, guys, all you need is this port and then these two wires. And then here's the nuts and bolts. This is the way to accomplish what we just talked about, which is to gather up all the audio and video in the room, get it back into your computer so that you can then record it. So guys, it looks like this. You've got your panel, and then you've got two of these audio-video cables. And this is the way you're going to do this. So you're going to take one of these cables, and you're going to plug the VGA cable into the computer in. Then you're going to plug the audio cable into the audio in. This is now the video and audio going into the brain. So it's always relative to the brain. So if it's going into the brain, it's got to come out of your computer. So the other end plugs into your computer's VGA port, the port that sends video out, and then the audio cable plugs into the headphone port. That's the one that sends audio out. So this then comes out of the computer and into the brain. So that's the way most of our classrooms are already set up. What we've got to do now is figure out how to get this information back into the computer. And that requires a second cable. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug this VGA cable into the monitor out, and then this audio cable into the audio out. So this is the signals that are coming out of the brain, and now we're going to send them back into our computer. So this is the way that this works. The other end of this video cable, the audio cable needs to go into the microphone port. That's the audio input port on your computer. So you need to put that into your microphone port. And then guys, the video end of this is completely up to you. If you're on a laptop and if you want to run a second monitor like I do, so I've got the laptop screen, but then I've also got my video screen, and you can see they're actually